Summary. Lispeth is a story about an Indian girl whose life is quite different from other Indians. As a baby, her family converted to Christianity. The chaplain who baptized her soon adopted her as her biological family died of cholera. One day, Lispeth went out for a walk where she met an Englishman, whom she fell in love with. She took the man home to the chaplain's house where they took care of him. As the Englishman got his strength back, Lispeth's love for him had grown very strong. In order for her heart not to break, the Englishman promised to return so they could be married. However, as the time passed, the Englishman never returned. The chaplain's wife had to tell her that he only made the promise for her not to protest against him leaving the country. This made Lispeth return to the village where her and her family once lived. Instead of marrying the lovely Englishman, Lispeth married a woodcutter who beat her. Narration and point of view. The text is written in past tense in an omniscient third-person narrator because the narrator reports everything he sees. However, he does have an attitude towards the natives, especially Lispeth. The descriptions of her almost seem ironic, as if he's making fun of her. Moreover, the narrator also interrupts the story to speak his own mind of what could have been ahead of an event. This shows that the narrator is not entirely objective concerning his beliefs of how natives and Englishmen are as persons.
Composition. The story has an introduction where the reader gets to know Lisbeth's story. The purpose of the detailed introduction is the fact that the reader gets an insight and understanding of the story from the beginning. The introduction is made to capture and catch readers' interest because the reader will most likely be curious on the future events in the story. The environment is presented from the very beginning. The same applies to the important characters who are introduced gradually as the story unfolds. All events happen in a chronicle order. The story is organized like that in order to provide the reader with a text that's easy and simple to read and understand. There are absolutely no flashback or flash forwards because there's no need for them. The only thing that happens is a chronicle gap in time, since the story covers Lisbeth's whole life. The narrator uses foreshadowing, which means that there are hints on what will happen in the future of the story. When, for instance, where Lisbeth's and the Englishman one-sided relationship and relations are described, the reader gets to know that he's married back home and that he finds Lisbeth's love amusing and entirely meaningless. Therefore, it's possible to foresee that there will be no happy ending in Lisbeth's first love affair. The point of no return happens when the Englishman leaves and never comes back. From that point on, there's absolutely no chance of a happy course of things in Lisbeth's love towards the Englishman. The ending provides the reader with a knowledge on how Lisbeth's life turned out. In that way, there is nothing the reader has to take to further consideration. The ending is most definitely closed because Lisbeth is presented as an old person at the very end, and we can be sure that nothing new will happen to her life, since she already chose her path. The ending is very predictable. The effect of the ending is that it provides us with some sort of fulfillment, because we know exactly how it ended, and there's nothing left to the imagination.
Characterization. Lisbeth is the main character of the short story. She's the only character who's given a name and described by the third-person narrator and other characters, as well as indirectly through her thoughts and actions. The narrator describes her as a beautiful girl. She's taller than the average of her people. Quote, Lisbeth had a Greek face, one of those faces people paint so often, see so seldom. She was a pale, ivory color, and for her race, extremely tall. Also, she possessed eyes that were wonderful. She likes reading and goes to church, but refused to go to Semla and become a nurse. Quote, took classes in the Sunday school and read all the books in the house and grew more and more beautiful like the princess in fairy tales. Furthermore, she decides that she wants to marry the Englishman without really knowing him. Quote, she was going to nurse that Englishman until he was well enough to marry her. That was her little program. The chaplain's wife. The chaplain's wife has no name. Her identity is defined by her status as a wife. Quote, Lispeth became a half-servant, half-companion to the wife of the then chaplain of Codgarth. Lispeth is like a half-servant, half-companion because she's challenged by her beauty and intelligence. She feels uncomfortable to treat her like a servant. Quote, the chaplain's wife did not know what to do with her. Somehow, one cannot ask a stately goddess 5 feet 10 in her shoes to clean plates and dishes. The Englishman. The Englishman is unnamed traveler. The narrative describes him as a globetrotter and a hunter of plants and butterflies, saying he had no real occupation. He was quote, he was a traveler in the east. He came from Dahradun to hunt for plants and butterflies among the Simla hills. Though he likes Lispeth, he sees her more like a pet than an equal human being. He's amused by her and her love. Quote, he laughed a good deal and said it was very pretty and romantic. His behavior feeling no guilt or shame for playing with the feelings. Quote, still he found it very pleasant to talk to Lispeth and walk with Lispeth and say nice things to her and call her pet names.
Setting, place. The story takes place in India, Kora. Time. The time happens during the British Empire. Cultural environment. The cultural environment can be described as classic Indian. However, the main character's parents converted to Christianity, and the British Empires had a huge influence on the country. The main character's life by the Kaplan and his wife can be described as typical British, since they had a lot of usages and traditions. The social environment, the biological family of the main person, they are poor and they are not of high standing in the classes of society. Lisbeth's new family are Kaplans, and the new family is very wealthy and has high status in the society.
Language and style. The structure of the sentences is relatively short and therefore easy to understand. Most of the sentences are simple to understand. The text provides us with complete sentences. There are a lot of dialogues between characters, and the vocabulary in the story can be considered at times neutral and ordinary, but at other times quite sad and depressing. The general tone used in the story is quite changing. When normal events are described, the tone is neutral. On the other hand, when Lisbeth's and the Englishman's relations are being described, a very ironic tone takes the ownership of the story. The language plays an important role in readers' understanding and interpretation of the text.
Theme and message. The circumstances between the modern society in India, led by the Britons through the British Empire, and the traditional Indians who did not want to be a part of a British revolution in India. The hope. The hope is shown by the way that Lispeth keeps trying to convince the men that they are meant to be together. Religion. It shows the difference between the life of a traditional Hindu/Indian and the effect of the British attempt to make the Indians Christians. The themes are implied the way they are told.